You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before FIRE. Using FIRE and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to FIRE instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a FIRE movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of Freedom Before FIRE, and I hope all is well with you. So if you were convinced about the benefits of Geoarbitrage from the last episode, this episode is all about how to actually plan for one. It's perfect for you if you're thinking about doing it, or even on the fence a little and want to know a little bit more. If you did miss the last episode, or if you're new to Geoarbitrage, feel free to have a listen. But essentially, Geoarbitrage is relocating to a lower cost of living area to increase your savings rate. So on these next two episodes, I'll be outlining 5 steps to plan and execute your way to Geoarbitrage. This episode will cover steps 1 to 2, and the next episode will cover steps 3 to 5. Alright, so let's kick things off with the first step. Okay, so the first step is understanding your why. Getting clear on your main reasons why you want to relocate. Your why will influence a lot of the other decisions you need to make. And it's that fundamental cornerstone that holds everything together. So some example key reasons might be, maybe you want to reduce your cost to speed up your journey to FIRE. Perhaps you want to take a long-term sabbatical and need to lower your expenses. Or maybe you want to try being a digital nomad and travel multiple countries. There are different reasons for it, so just be clear on your one so at least you have an overall goal to aim at. So for me, I moved from the UK to the Philippines back in 2018. Since I'm from the Philippines, my main reason was to get back to my roots, spend time with family, especially my grandma who was in her 90s at the time, and I also wanted to explore the country more. So everything else like lower costs, a warmer climate and all of those kinds of things, although part of the plan, were all kind of secondary really. Okay, so once you've got a good grasp of your why, you can now think about all the other considerations, which we'll discuss on step 2. Okay, so step 2 is all about research, and lots of it. If you're that person in your group or couple who always does the travel planning, and you know who you are, you absolutely love this step. So I'll be listing some considerations, and I've categorized them into importance level. There's 2 levels. There's important and super important. So let's start with the super important ones. So I've got 8 here, and they are location, income, family and friends, visas, your FI plans, duration, accommodation, and your backup plans. So let's elaborate a bit more on them, starting with the first one, which is location. Okay, so location is one of the most important decisions in what Geoarbitrage is all about. So you need to think if you'll go domestic or international. If domestic, do you have your eye on some general areas within your country? If international, do you have some ideas of the continent or the characteristics of the country? Like, do you want to be somewhere cold, warm, tropical place, things like that? So try to identify some personal non-negotiables for the location to help narrow down your list. Now for me, I already had a fixed place in mind, which of course was the Philippines, which kind of made things a bit easier. Luckily, I didn't have a long list of countries to get analysis paralysis. Okay, so the next super important thing is income. How exactly will you earn money there? Will you keep your old job? Do you have to find a new job? Can you do your existing job remotely, for example? Maybe you could continue your side hustle or be self-employed. Now, if you're traveling or doing a sabbatical, maybe you need to tap into your savings. You see, this topic is really important as you need to know how you'll be paying for your living costs. So for me, I transferred from an office based in UK to another branch based in the Philippines. So I was still in the same company and I just moved branch basically. Okay, so the next super important thing is family and friends. Now this is a big one. Now of course if you have a spouse and kids, you need to assess how this will impact them. For your wider family, like your parents and your siblings, and also your friends, you have to think if it will be a deal breaker if you're far from them. Naturally, this all depends on how far away you actually are. Maybe you can find ways to keep in touch, like visits here and there, or video calling if overseas. For me, leaving friends and family back in UK was difficult, but fortunately, I have friends and family in Philippines as well. Also, in this day and age, I can easily stay in touch with my peeps back in UK through video calling, WhatsApp, Messenger, and things like that. Okay, so number 4 on the super important list is visas. Now, this is more for international moves, as you need to understand your rights to live and work in your target country. For example, you may need to get a working visa if you plan to work in another country. Now, some countries even offer easier second residency permits, like Cyprus, Ecuador, Latvia, Cambodia, but you usually have to invest some money within the country, for example, depositing money in a local bank or purchasing property. Another thing you can think about is digital nomad visas if you work remotely. These let foreigners live and work remotely in countries for around 1 to 2 years. Now for me, I had to apply for a traditional working visa to live and work in the Philippines. It's funny because my visa card literally said I was an alien. An alien certificate card is what it was called. I was a certified alien. Okay, so the next super important consideration is your FI or your financial independence plans. If you want to continue saving and investing towards your FIRE stash, you need to check how you can continue investing if you're overseas. Okay, so number 6 on the list is duration. Of course, you need to think about how long this move will be. Will it be a few months, 1 to 3 years, maybe 3 to 6 years, or even permanent? For me, I based it on my visa duration, which was 3 years. So I said to myself, I'll give it 3 years and see if I want to renew it or go back to UK. Well, nearly 6 years later and I'm still here. Alright, so number 7 on the list is accommodation. So there's 2 parts to this, your new place and your existing one. So with your new place, you need to research what your living arrangements will be. For example, will you be renting? Will you buy a place? Will you do Airbnbs, hostels, or even house sitting? Other than your new accommodation, you'll also have to consider what you do with your existing one. So for example, if you're currently renting, you may need to complete your rental contract. If you own your house, you'll need to consider if you'll keep it, maybe rent it, or even sell it. Okay, so the 8th and last thing on my super important list is having a backup plan or plan B if all goes south. Actually, this is more to help you take the leap in the first place. You could think of it as kind of like a safety net under a flying trapeze. Having a backup plan is more of a psychological advantage. It makes you think like, okay, if it doesn't work out, I'll just deploy plan B. Okay, so if things don't work out, you might think about either going to another place or returning to your old place, for example, as a safety net. You might even consider setting aside some plan B funds just in case, and I'd highly recommend that. Okay, so my backup plan when I moved back then was to simply go back to UK if everything went sideways. I was renting in Philippines at the time, which made my situation a bit more flexible. Okay, so that's the super important list done. So let's look at the important list. So these are things you'll need to consider when reviewing your new location. And it's kind of similar things to when you're moving house, really. So things like, what's the situation on taxes and how much it is? What's the internet connection like for fiber and data connection? What's your everyday living cost like? Of course, the big 3 of food, housing, and transport. And also the 4th one, which is holiday costs, because I'm sure you still like to take holidays. So another one is, what will you do with all your stuff? Like, will you ship them, store any, get rid of any? How about getting around your new place? For example, is there public transport? Or will you need to buy a car or a motorbike? What's the healthcare system like? Also, if you need regular medication, can you still find it in your new place? Insurances, do you need any travel or accident insurance, for example? How about food requirements? Do they sell the specific ingredients you like or need? Or maybe you're a vegan or vegetarian like me. Does the new place have those options? What are the local amenities and things to do there? So for example, do you need to be near a gym, a beach, a school if you have kids, maybe a cinema, a park, or maybe some nightlife? Whatever your preferences are, really. Anyway, those are just some starter ideas to help you with your thinking process. Okay, so that wraps up part 1. On the next episode, I'll be going through steps 3 to 5. If you think this episode would help a friend, please don't hesitate to share it with them. The show notes can be found at freedombeforephi.substack.com. If you have a question or want to connect, feel free to send me an email at freedombeforephi@proton.me. That's freedombeforephi@proton.me. If you found this show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can follow us on Spotify or Apple via the show's main page or on whatever app you're using right now. And lastly, if you've just learned one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out here, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. If you're using Apple Podcasts, you can even leave a nice review by scrolling to the bottom of the podcast page. That would help us out loads. All right, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.